Oh, I think maybe he's just telling me to start, even though there's nobody here. Should we give it another minute? Should we give it another minute?
Nobody.
Do you guys want to give it a second, or? All right. We can go check on them. Let's just give it. So yeah, we're going to talk about Studio Network Solutions. That's the company that I work for. We do make shared storage for video and audio production. And we're going to kind of go over some of the trends that we're seeing here in the shared storage space, but really in the workflow space as well. So we do make workflow solutions, not just storage. Storage happens to be central to a workflow. You got to have a place to put your files so you know where they are. However, there are many facets to building a successful media workflow. So I'll tell you a little bit about our company and kind of where some of the places that we're uniquely positioned to talk about some of these trends relative to other storage that's out there. We're going to talk about the trends themselves and kind of how we're approaching them with our development roadmap. And then we're going to talk about the product a little bit, what we do today, how what we do today is on trend, and how we're navigating the trends again with development. And then we'll go through a few of the ways our customers use Evo and use our products for their workflows. So first, a little bit about us. We were built from the beginning out of an audio studio, out of a production facility. So necessity was kind of the mother of invention on this one. We bought some shared storage. It didn't work for Pro Tools in 1997. We made it work, and we found manufacturing shared storage and workflow way better than running an audio facility. A lot more travel, nights, well, depending on the trade show, the nights are a little, calmer than run an audio post. But since this thing, we've always kind of started off with what did we want to use, right? We solved a problem, but as we've continued to develop, we build products that we want to use. We're still staffed primarily. Our original audio engineer is still an employee. He's been there, he just celebrated 20 years with the company, the audio engineer from the studio. We've certainly added video engineers, custom software developers. Everything we make happens in-house. So we've been around since 1998. We're one of the older players at this point in the video shared storage space. We've seen many other companies come and go. And a lot of this is a testament not just to our products, but to the culture that we have. We're very customer-centric on that side. The last few years especially, we've really been pushing innovation with a lot of partnerships, a lot of our software, and fortunate to be recognized by the industry, whether it's NAB or BAM, IABM at the IBC show over in Amsterdam. We've actually won 10 industry awards in the past 4 years. But enough bragging. Let's start talking about our partners, which also put us in a unique position to see trends outside of just post-production shared storage, right? We make shared storage for and co-develop with ROS Video, right? ROS, whether that be switchers or graphics or media asset management, we do kind of co-develop, and we get to see what their customers want, not just what our traditional customers want. Broadcast is certainly coming more into the IP world with companies like VizRT and NDI protocols and baseband video and transport protocols. We actually developed the first Linux-based NDI recorder. And when Viz saw it, at the time they're new tech, they've continued to grow and things like that. When they saw it, they said, "This is great. We should just sell it." And we said, "Yeah, that's a great idea." But whether you're working with one of our OEM partners, like ROS or like Viz, all of the tools that come with our SNS Evo are included as well. Now, each partnership has its own unique functionality. ROS is a little more optimized with things like Inception Newsroom or Streamline or Media I/O workflows. Viz is going to be a little more set up with things like a TriCaster, which I think we're using here today, or with NDI Record. So with the Viz NRS, you can actually record NDI streams. It's an encoder directly using the storage processors. In fact, 55 HD30 ISOs simultaneously. So it's not just a small encoder, it's a heck of an encoder. With ROS Media I/O, ROS can write proxies into RMAM simultaneously to writing high res. So remote workflows are immediately ready when a broadcast is finished. We also have integrations. We believe in a very open architecture at SNS, so we use standard network protocols that are going to be optimized for media. There's no proprietary clients in order to mount your storage, nothing that has to be installed on 500 computers in a big lab environment. Everything is very easy to do. Because we use this, it's very easy for us to integrate with other things. We talked a little bit about NDI with Viz, but also things like Amazon S3, Dropbox, Azure, OneDrive, StorageA, Wasabi, Backblaze, Google. And these are just custom drop-downs in our software. We also have an open API that'll let you integrate to virtually anything, or a RESTful API, I should say. One of the things we released at NAB, and this one's really cool because it's not just us using our API and our customers using API to develop things, it's even third parties. Ortana for orchestration, as a orchestration software, actually saw our API. They realized they had a lot of customers that use Evo and built their own custom orchestrations off of it. So this open architecture opens up a world of possibilities as to whatever you may get into. Now, you've heard me talk about the software that we make a little bit. That's going to include what we call the Evo Suite, right? And this is all free in unlimited fashion. From us, you buy hardware, you get software. It doesn't have to phone home to check its license. I always make the joke, it's a weird business model in 2025, but you do actually own the thing that you buy from us. So that's going to include Share Browser. You're going to hear me talk about that in the trends section, so we just want to make sure you kind of know what words I'm saying when I say it. So Share Browser is our asset management system. It's going to help you tag stuff, it's going to help you find things, but not just on our storage, on any storage in your network or outside of it, like Amazon S3, for instance, if you're using that for archive. We're going to talk about Slingshot. Slingshot is a RESTful API. If you can write Python and interact with JSON-based APIs, you can do virtually anything. If you can't, like me, we have a very easy user interface. If I need to set up an automation, I can do it in 5 clicks to any of the targets we talked about before. And then last but not least, Nomad. So in 2020, we released Nomad. People needed to work from home. We're going to talk about that in the trends section. So let's talk about where we've been kind of lucky to get to, I guess, after 28 years in business. We've now been installed in over 80 countries globally. Some of that with our partners, some of that with us. This is an ever-growing list. We have employees on every continent. Well, minus one, but Antarctica's low on business these days. But where we are is also where video is. So the growth of video, when we think of video, we think 20 years ago, we think of broadcast. 10 years ago, we start to think of corporate, we think of advertising, and things like that. But video is everywhere now. It's ridiculous. So that could be corporate, it's house of worship, it's certainly broadcast, it's YouTube, it's everything, everywhere. It's TikTok influencers. So video has continued to grow, and here are some of the customers that we've been fortunate enough to work with, from giant production companies like A24 to giant YouTube stars like Mr. Beast to YouTube themselves, and a myriad of clients underneath, as far as things, local ad agencies, small production companies, bespoke, boutique, craft editorial, all of those fun terms. So now that you know a little bit about who we are and why we have opinions about the way the industry works, let's talk about the trends that we're seeing in storage and the trends we're seeing in workflow. Certainly the largest one, the one we can't go more than a day without talking about right now, is AI. Where is it going? Now, the title of this slide is AI-assisted media management, but it's really important to understand that AI is not monolithic. AI is a lot of things. AI is ML, it's machine learning. It's a way of training AI. It's not a subset, it's a precursor. LLM, it's a way of interacting with AI. Large language model, I want to talk to it. LLM certainly made famous by things like ChatGPT. Revolutionary on that side. Talking about generative AI. Now, generative AI is fascinating because generative AI encapsulates anything that gets created that's new, right? Including your conversation with ChatGPT. It's generative. But we see things like DALL-E now, generating images. Still some confusion around the intellectual property rights of what AI, generates or what it's trained on. But things like that. We see agentic AI, which basically means it has agency. It's going to do all sorts of different things. Agentic. Image recognition, auto-translation, auto-transcription, all of these things, but they're all different models. So when people talk about AI, I want AI. It's like, well, what do you want it to do? How do you want it to work? And this is a place where we were actually way ahead of this trend, if we talk about how SNS did this. So back in 2017, we released API hooks to Amazon Recognition. So our clients, since 2017, have been able to send files off for scene recognition or transcription based on their Amazon account. Certainly more AI is coming on-prem. And at NAB, we showed off our AI playground. So we've taken a lot of different AI models, and we started really doing some market research, because while all of our clients want to talk about AI, none of them know exactly what they want it to do yet, nor what it gets to. It's always, well, I want it to tag things. I want it to tag a puppy, or I want it to recognize a face, or I want it to do transcription. These are all valid things, but again, they're not one thing. You may have 5 or 6 or 7 different models. So we're taking an approach to AI right now that we're not going to go OEM it from someone else. There aren't a lot of standards in AI at the moment. It's kind of the Wild West. And we're looking for a lot of customer feedback. Some of our AI playground is available for testing to kind of play with, but we're really open to these conversations. But most important with the AI, if clients or with the API, if clients find an AI they like today, we inherently have the ability to integrate to it. Now, as far as AI goes too, there's also, I'm sure, well, hopefully everyone watching this at home, and I'm looking at the engineers in the room, I'm sure you guys will be very familiar with this name. AI is also not new, right? People think it's new. ChatGPT revolutionized it. But your bank has been using AI and machine learning to recognize fraudulent patterns in your spending for decades. On that side, this is not new. AI was really started in the 1950s. And one of the most famous AI engineers was Alan Turing, right? And so everyone knows about the Turing test. Can a computer fool a human into thinking it's a human? If so, it's intelligent. There are people who can fool me into thinking they're intelligent too. So, there's a trick to that. However, my favorite quote with AI, and something that I think we really have to be careful of in the current kind of iteration of where we are in the AI landscape, which will be ultimately revolutionary, is that Turing also said if a machine is expected to be infallible, it cannot also be intelligent. AI makes mistakes. AI is trained on imperfect data. And this is where this transition to AI is so interesting, because what can happen here is we've been trained, in all of my experience with computers, that computers themselves are infallible. They are perfect at math. They can do teraflops of instructions. But when computers start thinking and they're trained and they're teaching themselves through machine learning, through self-reinforcing loops. Garbage in, garbage out has always been true in engineering. It will be equally true in AI, and we'll see. So it's something to kind of be careful of as you're looking at AI and where it stands today. So with that, we're going to move on to our next trend, which is not so new, but hybrid cloud and remote. Now, what's interesting about this trend is, well, we've all been talking about this for at least 5 years, right? The trend itself, what we're finding, is reversing. There was a thing that happened around the beginning of this decade that forced everyone to go work from home for some reason, something we won't talk about. But you're going to see things, and this spurned a lot of innovation in workflow. I don't have access to my video server. I am not geographically proximate. I don't control the network. I have to connect over the wide area network or the WAN or the internet. And it spurned a lot of ways to kind of work around the physics of streaming high resolution video. And you're going to hear things like caching. You're going to hear things like S3. S3 is certainly a cloud protocol. By the way, it's not just Amazon's cloud. It is a standard protocol for communication with object-based storage. GCP would be Google's equivalent. You'll hear things like object storage, which sadly still is not perfect for video editorial because all of your video applications are still path-based. So object storage is going to be confusing for things like Adobe Premiere or Media Composer. You're going to hear deep archive VPN, and then of course the OpEx versus CapEx, which is the way we get you to subscribe to things and pay for them forever. And then you're going to hear about repatriation. This is the trend today. Repatriation. Get my data back. Oh my word, is this oh my world, is this expensive? I did not realize when I put 4 petabytes of data, video data in the cloud, that I don't really need to access, that it's going to cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars. So while SNS has embraced this, in fact, in 2020 we did release Nomad that I talked to you about a little earlier. That's our remote editorial. We released that 2 days after California instituted the first lockdown. So because we do build all of our software, we'll be able to be very responsive to these needs. We've also released Evo Cloud. This is a private cloud on that side. But we've also released the Cloud VPN Accelerator. So usually you're going to hear people say things like, ooh, video editorial over a VPN. And they're right. SMB has a lot of network overhead when connected. Corporate VPNs are often not set up for the high-speed access. They're set up to do things like telnet in for IT stuff and do some scripting in a shell, not play 4K video. So we developed our VPN Accelerator, where we control both client and server side of the VPN host, and we can get line speed using a standard SMB protocol over VPN. Now, what your line speed is may vary. I cannot fix the internet. I cannot control your ISP. And this is where other companies use things like caching. What we're going to use is the share browser proxy workflow. We find this to be a lot more transparent. So what some people will do is kind of cache the file, read the XML of the project, and put what you are using in RAM. There's 2 challenges there. One, what happens when you expand the clip? Well, you got to cache the rest of the clip. So the first time you play through, things can be a little slower. And as long as editors know that, it's okay. I've never met an editor that's cool with stuttery playback, though, whether they know it or not. What we do is we leverage our existing MAM database and our proxies for the MAM and our plugins to specific applications to actually download the entire proxy on the clip, automatically link it inside of a project. So this is transparent. So even if a connection is interrupted while the proxy is being downloaded, it'll pick up where it left off, not it will corrupt my file in RAM because it hasn't finished writing the file in the footer. This is also something that editors have been trained in for years. If you work in Media Composer, you know what an offline-online workflow is. Most Premiere editors know what a proxy workflow is. And I can see what files I'm missing and then go reattain them should I need to. But we also link to the source. So once the initial project is set up remotely, the only thing that needs to be transited over the network is a project file, something generally measured in kilobytes as opposed to terabytes. It's a little easier to move. What's also fascinating here is it's not just repatriation of data from the cloud for cost, it's people coming back to the office. RTO is the new thing, right? Return to office. In fact, I was just reading a Forbes article. 90% of companies expect to have everyone back full-time by 2027. I know none of us want to hear that, but it is what's happening. In Q1 of 2023, 31% of companies had a completely flexible policy. Be in the office, be out of the office. This was leftover, certainly, from the COVID pandemic. In 2024, that number dropped to 25, and it continues to decline. So now we're going to have to bring all this data back and figure out where it was. Now, if you had an Evo in the meantime, I would tell you you wouldn't have to worry about it because it'll all be in the central point already. If not, we're going to talk about automations a little bit later. In fact, I was just reading about a very large company that repatriated all of its data out of the cloud, started running its own data centers, and now saving about a $4 million a year cloud bill. And then we're also going to talk about edge devices. So we've also, during the pandemic, started putting our little mod boxes all over the place for remote editors. Then these can be like sync boxes. They can transcode on the edge, report back to central databases. So again, don't try to do things over the internet that the internet isn't good at on that side. So next one is automation and orchestration. Now the nice thing with this is a lot more straightforward than AI. These words aren't acronyms, and they mean what you think they mean, which is nice. So really, automation is going to be things like, imagine a robotic camera, right? I'm an actor, I'm going to go hit my mark, the camera knows what to do, it's going to pan in, it's going to do its thing. So if the camera is automated, the technical director in the broadcast truck is the orchestrator. He's managing all the cameras, or she is managing all the cameras, all of the different systems. When is a graphic coming up? Where are the cues? So orchestration is really managing multiple automations, and that could be for delivery. And one of the things we talked about a minute ago were things like Cortana. A great use case for that would be you have a MAM in Share Browser. With that Share Browser MAM, you can put in a tag. Cortana can read that database, and based on that tag, execute a set of commands, maybe using third-party automation engines, maybe using Evo's internal automation engines, whatever the case may be. But it's still the idea of getting rid of the repetitive tasks and providing some logic to things that are the same every time in disparate systems and tying them together. I mentioned Slingshot earlier. Slingshot released in 2015 for us, and well, it is our RESTful API, as you can see in the buzzwords, which is really just a way for machines to talk to each other. Slingshot also has this very easy-to-use UI. So if I wanted to set up everything in my internal environment, an SNS Evo, any other SMB storage that's local to me, needs to go automatically to Amazon. S3, there would be 3 clicks. I would pick Evo as my source. Maybe I would pick remote SMB as my source, because the server, because of its open architecture, can also mount other storage to itself. So I can be both a server and a client simultaneously, which provides you guys in engineering a lot of flexibility to build out a workflow. And my target would then be S3, right? And I can, but if we're going to move a lot of data around, it's also important that Slingshot can throttle copies. It can throttle itself. And say, all right, I got a 20 gig, I got a 25 gig line. Let's only use 2 gigs of it because other people are using that for certain things. Or it can just be scheduled with a couple of clicks. So it can be, yeah, copy all the data for backup, but do me a favor and only do it from midnight to 6 a.m. when nobody's here. Do this stuff at night when I'm not around. The next thing we talk about is Transcode Accelerator. Now this is our own orchestration engine. So we released an update for this at NAB, and we'll talk about it a little more later, but it can now take every instance of media encoder in your environment and use them to transcode large files. So if you have thousands of files that got ingested and hundreds of Mac workstations, well, they can all be working together to get things done more quickly. You're not dependent on a single piece of hardware. We're also going to talk about cloud storage here, LTO, and orchestration. So cloud, you already heard. We were on the forefront of this, but we've also S3 being a standard protocol. This is going to include second-tier cloud providers like Backblaze, Wasabi, things that might be just storage, right? They might not be enterprise cloud or something like that. But more important is the API itself, the Swagger document, the ability to expose the database for tag-based automation for companies like Cortana or companies like DVG to create custom workflows for their clients and not be limited by any the proprietary nature of a lot of video systems. So next one is scalable. Video keeps getting bigger. and then modular. And it keeps getting made in more places. So I think we just had a presentation from LiveView, came before me. LiveView is certainly modular, right? And can be scalable. The same thing needs to be true of the storage to which things write. So whether that be broadcast, whether it be post-production, video files continue to get larger. We see our mod here. This guy's 7 pounds. We actually have one back in the demo room, so we invite all of you to come back and take a look at that. But mod, 7 pounds. It's 30 terabytes. It runs all the software I've talked about so far. More important, it talks to its bigger brother. So when we talk about modular, it's not just important to have something that's good on the go, but something that can seamlessly fold into the larger environment when you get back. So while it can index itself with Share Browser, it can proxy itself, it can also tell the database when I get back to my primary facility, here's what I did while I was away. Or if it gets internet connection, it can tell it in the short term. It can upload proxies for remote workflow more quickly than it can upload source. We'll talk about that in our case studies as well. And then Evo Cluster. Sometimes you just need it to be big. You need one big namespace. You just need a place to dump everything, call it backup, call it nearline, call it whatever you want. The Evo clustered file system can expand to 25 petabytes in a single namespace. But it's not just about scaling the storage. Yes, that's important because you have more data. But you also have to scale the workflow. What if I add 100 users? Sure, I need more storage. But I also need more speed. And I also need more licenses of the asset management system. And I need more automations because I have more locations. This is where it's so important our customer-centric kind of philosophy comes into play. We don't charge you for software. The only thing you might need is more storage. You'll buy that. But 100 more licenses, fine. You need to want to work on a proxy workflow so you don't have to upgrade the entire network infrastructure yet, fine. We'll give you more software. You'll go to the Share Browser remote workflow in the short term. So it's important to be able to scale both, not just the cost, right? It's really easy to scale cost. Getting big is easy if you've got an unlimited amount of money. Let me know if you meet someone who does. And then again, that's where we're going to get into those unlimited user. This is the fun trend that's coming into video that is so frustrating, but very important, and that's what matters. So more and more security and reliability. Reliability has always been a big deal, right? But with the pandemic, we connected everything together. And then we're shocked that anyone could use that for a malicious purpose, you know? And so security used to be the purview of IT. As a video user, I didn't have to worry about it. I could air gap my system. I was running over SDI. I wasn't on IP. I didn't necessarily need the internet except maybe to authenticate a license for my NLE or something like that. But sadly, more and more these buzzwords are creeping into kind of the creative user's lexicon, right? We now have to deal with encryption. We have to deal with ransomware attacks, denial of service. We have to deal with, oh, we went to the cloud, now the cloud is down. I'm sure it'll be back soon. 3-2-1 is a backup strategy. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that. That one's been around for a while. The other thing we have to deal with now is MFA. How many factors are you guys up to for login? You only 2? Yeah, I'm on 6 on some days, depending on the software. 6 isn't true, it's hyperbolic, but 3 at least. I get my code, then I still have to enter my password, then I have to move my license. It's a whole thing. So the way we handle this is we were the first to create AES 256 encryption at rest and in flight for video systems. Lots of storage as AES 256 encryption. Decrypting video in real time while you are simultaneously decoding it, that's tricky. And we've done quite a bit along this, so all of this is shipping now. We also have a custom operating system. Right? We actually compile our own OS from source code. There's a custom kernel of Linux. The only things that are in it are what we put there, so there are not a lot of associated vulnerabilities with standard distros of things, whether that be Windows that has to be locked down or whether it be other standard distros of Linux or whatever the case may be. We do support SSL for our web-based applications. We have a couple of unique permission modes that are pretty cool. And of course, shell is disabled. Because if you can't install anything on your server, neither can anyone else. We've also added some security features for VFX clients, like user auditing, where we actually track every file interaction. Those can be bundled and sent to standard IT systems like syslog. to watch for potentially malicious or problematic behavior. And of course, backup automations and immutable backups and things like that. So what's important about us with this open architecture versus a more proprietary system is the ability to, we have to deal with IT now. And we have to meet them on their terms, or they're just not going to let you on their network. As far as reliability, we have been around for 28 years. Some of the largest productions in the history of the world have been done on Evo. In fact, as of last year, based on the Guinness World Record, the largest production with the most contestants and the largest cash prize in history, and about 44 other Guinness World Records, was all done on SNS Evo, something we're very proud of. So let's talk a little bit more about Evo and the Evo Suite. You can configure this with Flash. You can configure it with HDD, depends on your use case, depends on your budget, depends on your workflow needs and your speed needs. We can support 10, 25, and 100 gig Ethernet, again, presenting over standard network protocols. Talked about the custom Linux operating system. More important are the way we tune these standard protocols. So we're using caching algorithms. This is not caching for a remote workflow. This is the way the system works internally to make sure that SMB is properly tuned for sequential read. A lot of IT systems, when we talk about some of the IT players, are tuned for IOPS. They're going to run a database. How many files can I open and close in a second? How many commands can I pass? That is not how video works. We open 3 files, but they're big. And they play in a line, because if I just throw random frames at you, it's going to look weird. So what's really important for a video system is sustained throughput, and that is a place where we excel. So we talked about share browser. You can kind of see it in the background here. The second part of this is most important. For those of you familiar with media asset management, it's all about searching stuff. It's about managing your assets, being able to find them, and it's about getting your editors to think about managing files in a completely different way than they have ever done before. And that's the part that fails. So easy to use is critical. You can kind of see in the background, ours looks a lot like the Mac Finder or the Windows Explorer. It is intuitive. It is easy to use. And if they don't use it, it doesn't break it for the people who do. You can move stuff around. You have direct file system access within the MAM. So changes in the file system, like Explorer or Finder, are immediately reflected in the asset management system. They don't result in a media offline, which, well, it pisses me off in my NLE. I got to tell you, it's not any more fun in my MAM. It's like, what do you mean someone moved the file? It's going to let you search, tag, comment, preview. These are those proxies we're talking about. And Share Browser actually supports 2 different types of proxy in the database. It's going to support a preview proxy, something we use in web encode, so you can search through a web browser and play the smallest version of the file. But also an edit-ready proxy for remote workflow that could be something like a ProRes variant or something like that. That would be Apple certified ProRes. You can also subclip in the MAM. Now what's cool about this is those subclips, those time markers you use in the player inside of Share Browser, are going to immediately translate onto your timeline. So you don't have to cross-reference between the MAM and the NLE. If you import to Premiere, you're going to have your markers. If you import to Resolve, you're going to have your markers. If you go into Final Cut, same thing. Also, if you use the Share Browser remote workflow, the path for that is exactly the same regardless of what NLE you use. So I don't have to change. I don't have to retrain. In fact, via XML Exchange, our tags will also go into the NLE. So you can get the MAM out of the way. So you don't have to teach the editor anything. They already know everything anyway. And as I said, it will work with third-party storage as well. So many MAMs that are included with storage work exclusively with their storage or have charges to index third-party storage or to move data between them. This is free. If it's storage and it's on the network, it will work with Share Browser. As I said before, in the AI trend, you can already use things like Amazon Recognition, our API, to integrate with whatever AI you think is going to win today and be able to change tomorrow. We do have the Share Browser extensions inside of Adobe Premiere, After Effects, Apple's Final Cut. We can mount as Avid's file system for Media Composer for project and bin locking, and of course a panel inside of Blackmagic Resolve. Next up, Slingshot. Slingshot moves stuff. It copies stuff, and it does it based on rules. It does it through that simple UI that I talked to you about, or in a very advanced way through advanced scripting using things like Python. It can also be used to index third-party storage. It can be used to transcode, including raw formats, things that a lot of other asset management doesn't, because we build this in-house. So we can do ARRI raw, B raw, Red raw, ProRes, whatever. And with Transcode Accelerator version 2, as I said before, we can now do any codec that Adobe Media Encoder supports. Canon raw, Sony XOCN. So just because you have 10 Macs in your environment, you might not realize it, but if you have an Evo with Slingshot, you also have a transcode farm. So it's about clients doing more with less and keeping that customer-centric approach. We don't want to charge you for 100 codec packs. We want you to be able to work and work quickly. You can watermark these images with the transcoder. You can do camera timecode burn. You can copy timecode across multiple formats. And of course, you can again use the API for more advanced custom integrations. Something like what Ross did with Media.io to develop the auto proxy import to the database, or the dual encode, so that there's no wait for transcode time. Last but not least, Nomad. Nomad is a remote editing tool. It's actually a lot more these days. So Nomad can be used to extract proxies from the database for any NLE. So let's say, as I said, I downloaded a proxy when I created my project remotely. I've got my offline workflow, and I sent you the project. Well, you don't have the proxies. Nomad can then be used to extract your own version of those proxies, always maintaining the same source link across all workstations, all computers, so no more relinking media. But it's also the home for our VPN. It's our VPN client that supports the VPN accelerator. It's also the ability now to turn your Mac into that distributed transcode node. So Nomad is telling the transcode accelerator, I've got media encoder over here and what I'm doing with it, so that I can schedule these transcodes. And again, be able to leverage all of the existing hardware that I have to accelerate my workflow without having to buy anything else. So again, while storage is central to a workflow, it's not the only piece. So it needs to enable all the other pieces of the workflow because, well, it's where the files are. As you can see, the Evo hardware platform comes in a variety of different shapes and sizes, from our smallest little mod over there, that, like I said, about 7 pounds, up to 30 terabytes of SSD. That little sucker has 2 ports of 10 gig on the back of it too. It will fly. All the way up to our 16 bay servers, or to our massive scale out clusters down below. And of course, if you don't want any hardware and you want to go OpEx, the Evo Cloud, which also comes with all of our software. So let's talk about how our customers are using this a little bit. First and foremost, we have Hammerhead Entertainment. This is cool. This is Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s production company. So they shoot in really high resolution. They shoot ARRI RAW, ARRI Alexa, and an 8K Red Dragon. And well, during the pandemic, they needed to work off-site. They had an older kind of simple NAS. I think I can use the company name because I'm pretty sure they went out of business. But they had a little Drobo, which is what we see so often with customers. It's like, well, I just need a place to store my stuff, and I push and pull, but I can't really collaborate. But when they saw Evo, obviously they weren't playing 8K Red off of a Drobo. I don't think any of us are surprised by that. But with this, they were able to actually collaborate and collaborate remotely. So by actually collaborate, I mean link to the same place and play the files over the network, not have to pull everything down, make my project, send it to somebody else, let them spend an hour relinking all the media that's in it, even though the file paths are the same, and go from there. So this was a fun one, certainly. Graveyard Cars is another one. I got a little bit of a car theme for this presentation. They had an older system as well, and their system was fast enough to edit video off of. But they were on season 3 when they picked up here. So they had all these assets from season 2 that they kind of knew where they were. I kind of know where my stuff is, But they really were able to take advantage of Share Browser. And because when we index files, even if you, like I said earlier, even if you don't tag anything, because we use this open standard and we can harvest things like EXIF data, you're going to be able to search by when it was created. You're going to be able to search by the frame rate. You don't need to manually enter anything for that. It's just there. It just needs to be extracted and made searchable. So their ability to then quickly get their stuff organized, even before AI, made them able to start delivering in about half the time. Digital TV is cool. So this is actually a broadcast network. This one's neat because it was founded during the pandemic. So imagine you're opening a giant, broadcast network, and all of a sudden you say, "Hey, everybody go home." So Nomad turned out to be a lifesaver for them. They got Slingshot in, they were share browser, they were getting things indexed. They were actually backing up to Microsoft Azure. More important, they're transcoding before they back up, so they're not having to use cloud transcoders, which can be pricey. But they were able to seamlessly pivot to the remote workflow without a hiccup, right? So they have documentaries, sci-fi, variety shows. I mean, this is a whole network. Now these guys are out, I believe, I'm gonna mess it up, somewhere in Southern Europe, so I'm not gonna pick a specific country in case I mess it up on that side. And even all the way back to our founding, which again, we were kind of born out of audio. Mike D is an audio facility. This is a multi-room, multi-track recording facility. They do feature film. As well as albums, as well as everything else. So their ability to, again, kind of leverage the entire Evo system and do real-time tracking, which is very hard to do on shared storage, was a huge, huge help for them. The next one is a little harder to do a specific case study on, right? This one gets a little tricky. They don't even tell me what they use it for sometimes, or they assure me they could tell me, but they'd have to kill me. Yeah, there you go. But it's quite the honor to be able to work with not just the U.S. military, but other international militaries, state, federal, local government. These guys, you want to talk about security, back to trend, it matters here. They get particularly concerned for some reason. But they also, more than other clients, have to vet the supply chain, right? So Evo is something called TAA compliant. So we are made in America on that side. And that's an incredible, all of our development is done in the US, all of our cloud host stuff is in the US. So that's an incredible comfort to our government clients who really just can't take the risk of using something that isn't. The other thing that's really interesting about the military and government clients is the varied use cases that they have for video. It could be a 4-man squad somewhere. It could be a giant base, with 100 users or something. So that it's neat because all these trends kind of converge in the military. What they mean by edge is very different than what I mean by edge. On the compute, they mean 4 guys out somewhere that we don't want to know about. But scalability becomes incredibly important for them, but also the cost. They don't have, well, we might think they do. The military does not have an unlimited budget. And a large amount of that budget has to go to the primary core of the military, which is warfighting and protecting the United States of America. They don't have spare money lying around just to run, video systems. They have to support the primary mission. And while visual information continues to become more important in both military and government things, it's not the core. It's there to support the core. So their ability to have unlimited authorized user is also incredibly important for our government and, of course, our academic clients as well. So as a quick recap, Evo is a complete workflow solution. It could be in the cloud, it could be on-prem, it could be on the edge, it could be both, it could be all. Never none, though. Speed, scalability, and workflow tools all kind of bundled into one package here. All of these tools on trend and or ahead of trend on that side. So we are kind of supporting this, and these are the things we're seeing in the marketplace today. We are purpose-built for media production of all kinds. So whether that be the largest game show in the history of the world or a remote team somewhere trying to beam data back to make decisions about what's happening somewhere in, a forward area. All of this is about media and about video. If you want to learn a little bit more about what we do, you're welcome to come see us in the main room. You're also welcome to check out our website where we have a lot of more case studies as well as explainer videos and training videos. You can also get in touch with us here at SNSevo.com. We're happy to do kind of a live personalized demo for you, or certainly just reach out to your local DVG rep. They'll be happy to get you in touch with us and get you integrated there. Thank you guys so much for the time, and if we do have a few minutes, I can open it up for any questions. They're all looking at you, Kevin.
Why?
Oh, Steve's got one in the back. What do you got, Steve?
Your good presentation. You're mellow.
It's late in the day.
When you were talking about the frame rates and the time and everything,
Mm-hmm.
I remember you showed me last year. You were talking about AI earlier, I think.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like on my phone, you know, it detects dogs and
Sure.
different things.
Yep.
Can you go a little bit, you know, to some of those things as well?
I mean, that's a...
Like, I think there was like, isn't there like 30 fields or like?
You can have as many fields as you want. So AI is based on, it's a different kind of database, right? Usually when we think of a database, often the allegory would be a database is like a spreadsheet, right? SQL or no SQL, but there are rows and columns, and typically things are gonna have to match exactly, whereas AI is based on what's called a vector database. It's a little more three-dimensional, and these vectors themselves are also correlated. So it's kind of like saying, well, column A could also be row C, but column D, if we try to put it into a spreadsheet. So it doesn't exactly work in the same way. And this becomes really interesting because Share Browser can capture those vectors, right? When we send something to recognition, for instance. AI does the scene recognition. It goes, okay, I know that's a dog. Great, dog. That's the vector. Dog also might be canine. It's related. It's got a scientific name to that. And that may come back as well. However, AI is not necessarily fast, and it takes a lot of compute. So you may or may not have the on-prem compute. If you're using Amazon, Amazon has all the compute in the world. It'll happen as quickly as they're able to do it, or as quickly as you pay for it to happen. But it's antithetical to the way that we traditionally search. So by having the Share Browser MAM be able to interact with the AI, I can still get the speed of traditional search once the vectors have been returned. So yeah, we can do scene recognition, you can do things like transcription, you can do facial recognition, but all of these are slightly different models. They're all based on these like foundational models that are out there that certainly, again, OpenAI has popularized. And a lot of ChatGPT, a lot of the AI today, we're kind of on the precipice. It's not totally as productized as like an iPhone, but like when you think about the revolution of the smartphone, right? These were all existing technologies, right? Apple didn't invent the touchscreen. It certainly didn't invent cellular, but it did put in a really nice package that was easy to use, that I continue to use on that front. So, and that's where we're going to get to with AI, is who's going to win as far as bringing all these models together, making it easy to understand, making it easy to train, what data sets was it trained on. It will be incredibly powerful. I've seen products now that'll do rough cuts based on AI, but you just have to consider the timing. You also have to consider that there's not a lot of standards yet in AI. So if you pick one and you're wrong, you're not necessarily going to transit it over to some other AI system, right? All the same vectors might not be there. All the same training data might not be there. So it's just a place to be slightly cautious at this point. There's a lot of cool use cases. There's a lot of hype around it. It demos incredibly well. But finding your use case for it and where it's going to have the best bang for the buck in a world where, well, we have to pay for stuff and we have to show other people who, you know, count things for a living what the return is on what they let me pay for. That can be a little trickier to do.
But that actually was what I was wondering about. So just forget about Amazon and obviously their recognition, but when you buy any one of these products, right? Let's say you have a TriCaster, you buy one of these products for recording. In some application, you're recording products, whatever it is. So you might want to look up something, look up box, look up computer. But how much of that is there, or is this stuff you're doing after the fact, or you're leveraging a different open database? Like how does that work? How does it
So in the
learn? You know, I have phones here, backpacks, bag.
Yeah, I mean, so that's where these foundational models come in, right? In some ways, think of it like, I think of a good allegory. So back in the 70s, pre my time, 60s, when audio became super popular. There were guys, right? And they just run around the country and they'd record stuff, right? The Wilhelm scream. They'd record surf, you know? And they built up this audio library. Well, now this audio library has become part of the foundational models of a lot of this AI and different things. So first we had to get the data set. We have the data set. It's continuing to progress. A lot of this stuff is here. That's what we were showing in the AI playground. It's not shipping yet on that front, so we're really still garnering a lot of feedback. But see, I think what's important there is whether it's your company with Viz doing their thing with AI, whether it's Amazon, whether it's whatever any client wants to use or has found value in the short term, is that the API is there to integrate it into both a traditional search as well as something like a large language model, right? Maybe I want to talk to the computer and say, do we have anything of puppies? Sure, yeah, we do, we don't, you know. So again, it's kind of, where it is within our product is still early on, and we're kind of getting customer feedback, and we've got things working in the lab, so much so that we showed them at NAB. But it is still kind of the bottom of the first in AI, so to speak. So just be careful picking a winner. Yes, we can integrate to anything that's out there with an API. That's the API is shipping, ready for the people with the skill sets to bring that stuff in. Any other questions? See, AI is definitely the most on-trend one. That's the only one anyone has a question about. But guys, I encourage you to look at all the different video storage out there. I encourage, some of it will be, you know, features, some of it will be business case, some will be cost, and certainly give SNS a try, and certainly talk to your DVG reps about taking a look at it.
I have one more.
Oh, man.
How many, you know, I was so impressed last year, I remember at InfoComm when we talked about recording, you know, directly to
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, obviously, no, I can assume with a company like DVG, you know, there's a lot of customers that put together really big NDI networks. Some of them have our stuff, some of it doesn't even have our products. But how do the limits work? Is it, like, does every storage have a different limit of the amount of NDI streams it can record and play back? Is it, you know, based on traditional bandwidth?
So you're talking specifically about the VizRT NRS, right, which has the Linux-based NDI plugin. And what's really important to understand here is the distinction of, and this happens in post too, is where is the processing happening, right? A lot of people don't understand, like, well, I'm rendering on my local computer, but I can offload a transcode, or if I can offload a render to a render farm. Same thing is true with NDI. So what is encoding, or what is saving the NDI, right? The NDI is already encoded, it's baseband. Well, it's not baseband, it is encoded, it's a transport protocol. But typically, when you're using an NDI device, you have a separate network NDI device that's doing the recording, or you're using the processors of the switcher to do the NDI recording. And switchers, for all of time, no matter how big the matrix gets, have a limit. X number of ins, X number of outs. Maybe it's bidirectional, maybe it's not. With SNS, the limit is the processors, but where is the recording, where is the processing happening? It is happening on the shared storage server. So I'm freeing up the switcher. So yes, each size, each form factor of NRS has slightly different processor sizes and number of NDI streams it can record. It can do 16 bay, can do 55 HD 30 ISOs simultaneously. So like I said earlier, it's not just a small encoder, it's a heck of an encoder. It can do 30, 4K 30, full NDI, not NDI-HX, as well as 15 4K 60. So we see the use cases here, especially things like high school sports, where I don't have to sit there and create control rooms and run SDI. I just put NDI cameras all over campus, plug them into a network, and I can pop up all the sources in the single interface through the NRS storage and decide what to record, start, stop, whatever. If you're using NDI tools, you'll even support growing file inside of Adobe Premiere, right? So I can actually watch the sporting event in my NLE and be chopping it up. Like, let's record track practice today. And we don't have to think too much about it because NDI is also an open standard. So yeah, any places you have more than one switcher, places you have lots of NDI cameras, lots of NDI sources. One of my favorites is a vet school that we did out in Colorado. They had 15 different operating theaters, and it was all kind of making the control room with NDI was a heck of a lot easier because it was being run by doctors, right? On that side, than trying to teach them to be broadcasters. On that side, it was like open window, click record all, you're good, you know? So, any other questions?
Good job, dude.